Honestly, even a question I could ask you is, because you've mentioned it's the uphill battle that brings value. And when you reach the
Yeah,
pinnacle of that mountain, what you want to see is another higher mountain in the distance for you to
right.
accomplish.
Yeah.
But what do you do when the previous years have felt like Mount Everest and just a lot of suffering, a lot of difficulties, a lot of pain you've had to push through, a lot of joy as well. But you almost want to step back and be like, okay, do I need to find a higher mountain than this, a more difficult challenge to continue to grow and to find more value? Or can I maybe find a more lateral mountain, a sideways movement rather than an upward movement? And I mean, it's a question where
I think some of it, look, you could imagine that there are a variety of really quite qualitatively different mountains to climb. The height might not be so much the issue, although it's one issue, as the diversity of the climbs. So imagine there's two ways of making progress, right? You can go up a more and more difficult terrain, which you've already done with the Olympia contest. You went up a very difficult mountain, a very steep mountain, all the way to the top. But then, now you're at the pinnacle, you could look around and you could see, oh, well, there's all sorts of different places to climb. Okay, and one way of becoming a better person is to do something very difficult and to attain a pinnacle. But another way to become a good person, like a fully fledged person, is to take on a lot of different challenges. And you don't have to be like every single challenge that you're going to undertake doesn't necessarily have to be another Mount Everest, right? Because there's something to be said for many different climbs. Now, in your own life, you mentioned two things that are right there in front of you. I mean, the first is that you're going to be a father. Okay, well, that's going to keep you busy. That's a bottomless well. It's an opportunity and a challenge, and there's no limit to how good you could become at that, right? There's no limit to how good a mentor you could be to your son or your daughter. There's no limit to how good a relationship you could establish with them if you made that a priority. So, that's something right there that could easily occupy like a third of your life, because it's a big deal. And that area of opportunity will grow up even more if you have more kids, right? Because, well, then there's more challenges of that sort. And then you also have your marriage, right? And that's one of the things I've discovered with my wife, and this has really become more tangible for us in the last few years, because both of us almost died. And not just a little bit, like brutally and over, months and years. It was very rough. And one of the consequences of that was, like, we were apart, really, because of our illnesses, various illnesses. We were apart for something approximating 2 to 3 years, depending on how you look at it. And we grew apart during that period, as you do, because that's a long time. But we've found new depths to our relationship that we didn't know were achievable in the aftermath of that.